Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Now, ever since the withdrawal of subsidy on petrol and the attendant consequences, the use of alternative sources of energy to power vehicles has been vigorously promoted by the government. CNG, compressed natural gas, was touted as the immediate option to the astronomical increase in transportation and other costs brought about by high petrol price. And that was how the presidential CNG initiative began, under the watch of an engineer, Michael Uluagbemi, who superintends over the program. Today he returns to tell us about the progress made so far, the drawbacks and the fears. Thanks for being here once again.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's a Happy New Year.
Right. Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you.
All right. So, the presidential CNG initiative that came about, well, we all know what led up to its being birthed in the country. And initially, there was a lot of skepticism. And I don't think that all of that has gone away now. No. But let's start from the very beginning. Why would we think that that was the alternative?
Yes, once again, Happy New Year to your viewers and compliments of the season. I pray that 2025 bring our nation great tidings and for development and growth. I think it was obvious that Nigeria was on a path of unsustainable for energy security as far as the country's development was concerned prior to the coming of Mr. President. We're a nation that was spending tons of money importing dirty, expensive petrol and diesel that was fueling the economy, accounting for well over 95% of our energy needs. Even though we do have the raw crude oil, we were exporting that, and then we're importing petroleum products from other countries, essentially importing poverty and exporting jobs. In addition to that, we're also flaring the gas that was a cheaper alternative to petrol, to crude oil, which sells on an MBTU basis 80% cheaper than crude oil derived products like petrol and diesel. We were flaring it. We were burning about 8 BCF of that's billion cubic feet of gas a day, while we're using just about 1.3 billion cubic feet of gas a day, primarily for power. We're exporting close to 3 BCF of gas, 3 to 4 BCF of gas through NLNG, and then we're injecting another 3 or thereabouts back into the ground, even though we had processed those gas. So that gives you about 49-50% gas utilization if you counted reinjected gas as being utilized, at least for well reservoir maintenance, and then another 8 BCF burnt. So that it was not sustainable. We are using 5 trillion that we did not budget for in a country that was borrowing about 9 trillion to fund the 2023 budget. As at May of 2023, when the president took the dais, we had spent 5 trillion to import petrol that we'll use, and to subsidize petrol that we use, not to import. We're already spending about 15-20 trillion to import, but 5 trillion of that was government subsidizing the consuming masses. So if you look at that profile, you were borrowing against your great-grandchildren's future to burn a product that was not beneficial to the economy from the point of view of both the environment as well as the economy, because it was not creating jobs. In fact, an estimate of up to 50 to 60% of that fuel was seeping through your borders and encouraging terrorism and smuggling. So in the net, the petroleum subsidy regime was a super loss to the country, was netting off Nigerians' future, was destroying jobs, was destroying the environment, and also was not efficient for the economy. Nigeria was being driven to a financial abyss. So Mr. President, when he came to office, decided to implement the law. The law says, 2021 PIA Act says that subsidy needed to stop. But Mr. President knew that there was a cheaper alternative, and that's why he birthed the presidential CNG initiative to allow us to utilize gas.
All right. So the famous statement, subsidy is gone.
Yes.
And then the subsequent hardship and the cries of people having to cope with prices shooting through the sky, literally.
Yes.
But then you said there's a cheaper alternative. And the CNG, Nigeria isn't the first country. Now, the first query about that was we had seen some other countries in the world who had, at one point in time, recommended the CNG. But again, it never did catch on. And so the first question about this initiative was, if it was that good, why did other parts of the world not catch on to it with such enthusiasm? And so why is it good for us?
Yes, number one, Nigeria has a comparative advantage. We're a gas country that happens to have crude oil. We have over 201 TCF of natural gas, actually 208, 209 TCF. That's trillion cubic feet of natural gas that will last us for over 100 years if we were burning it at the current, we're producing at the current rate. And we have undiscovered another 450 trillion cubic feet of natural gas on our feet. We're a gas province that happens to have some oil. The other countries you refer to don't have gas at the quantum, at the level that Nigeria has it. So Nigeria sure has no business, in fact, running its economy on any crude oil derived products. Rather, what Nigeria should be doing is making sure that we refine every single pint of crude oil that we can find in the ground, export every single pint that we do not need to use, and then use natural gas that we have in abundance to fuel our economy cheaply to ensure that Nigerian-made products are cheaper, competitive, and use that to flood the rest of the world. That should be our economic strategy. So you use your natural gas, which is, as you know, is the cause of the Ukraine war and the Russian gas, and it's natural gas that drives global industrialization. Natural gas is used for power, is used to feed you because it's what goes into your fertilizer for the making of urea and NPK. You need natural gas for that. It's natural gas that goes into the making of plastics, including solar, even renewable, depends on the use of natural gas. So natural gas is the basis of industrialization. So what Nigeria should be using is not just using that natural gas for everything I've mentioned, but also to power transportation. Transportation is 15 to 18% of the GDP. It accounts for about 20% of the average household income. If we're able to drop the cost of transportation because we're using our natural gas, that price is for 80 to 85% cheaper than petrol, then our economy is more competitive. Products made in Nigeria can then go to Ghana and outcompete them because they are made at a lower cost than that in Ghana because they are using natural gas, because Ghana does not have that advantage. And to your point, there are some countries that have tried and have failed, but I don't think there's anything that says in the world that because others have tried and failed, that you should not try. The reality is that you have different competitive advantages. We have gas as our competitive advantage, and in fact, some other countries have succeeded. Iran has been able to grow its natural gas vehicle to up to 6 million. Just like Nigeria, it also has a natural gas advantage, of course, with a massive payload of gas in its border between Iran and Qatar. A country like Egypt also has a natural gas advantage. They also have more natural gas than they have crude oil, and they have been adding their natural gas vehicle, and they are looking to have up to 1 million in the next 2 years. They started their program earlier than us in 2020, but we are also catching up. We are in fact going to surpass Egypt in no time if we continue at our current pace. And you have countries like India also that are already invested in natural gas, and they have well over 5 million vehicles in India that is running on natural gas. In their case, they're actually importing that natural gas mostly from Nigeria. NLNG is the producer of the natural gas for India and Japan. They then turn around and then they make vehicles that is running on petrol for Nigeria to use. That doesn't make any sense. We then use that those vehicles that are made in India and Japan that are coming into Nigeria, either your Toyota or your Suzuki, as the case may be. We then demand petrol, and then we go buy petrol that is refined in India and Japan from their refineries to fuel Nigeria's economy and buy it at its high price and then sell it at a loss, further imperiling our economy. If there's a definition of madness, I could not ever imagine anything more than that. We cannot be selling gas to India, and India is using it to get comparative advantage over us, and then sell to us products that are priced cheaper because they get our natural gas to actually burn to power the economy. So at the end of the day, the point is Nigeria has comparative advantage with natural gas, and by all means, we have to use it. Not everybody is blessed with crude oil and natural gas the way we are. Well, in our case, we are blessed with more natural gas than crude oil. And even if you look among our neighbors, that is a unique gift. It's not many countries right next to the border of Nigeria do not have the quantum of crude oil and natural gas God has given to us. But I believe those products are here because they're there for a reason. And God has given us those products to power this economy, to ensure our bountiful human resources. I always still say that Nigeria's greatest resources is what is above our neck and not what's below our feet, whether crude oil, natural gas, or gold. But we need energy in order to drive those human resources, and that's why we need to use our natural gas to deliver economic development.
All right, so that takes us to the stage of setting up for this. Let's go to the very basics of it. Yes, natural gas would be better, but you didn't have the infrastructure, and so we started. Now, for a country with a huge motoring public, the infrastructure that some would say expected that we would at least have put something on ground, but we started from ground zero.
Yes, Rome was not built in a day, but a journey of 1,000 miles will start with the first step. The reality was when we started the GSM revolution in 1999-2000, there were maybe very few towers in the country, if you recall. What happened was we opened up the economy first and foremost with free market principles. The same principles that we use in GSM is what we're using in the case of natural gas. You open up the market and allow investors to come in. They see the opportunity and they invest. In our case, we've seen investment of over $440 million. All through the last year, there was just $23 million of investment in CNG in the year prior. In the entire of last year, we tracked over $440 million of direct investment into CNG. That tells you that the markets are seeing the signal that this country is moving towards its natural gas future, especially in the transportation sector. And businessmen, entrepreneurs, and innovators are willing to bet their money to ensure that those infrastructure you're talking about get built. When GSM first started, it was very common that when you left the inner cities where there was then the limited tower infrastructure, that you will lose signal and there were call drops and you could not call when you go to your village. But slowly but surely, entrepreneurs began to invest and towers began to spring up all across Nigeria and started getting built. And then what you have over time is that there were even too much towers at one point, and they had a consolidation. You now had Globalcom, Airtel, Etisalat, all these companies now sharing towers because they had to do consolidation. And that's a similar thing that will happen in the case of CNG. Initially, there will be some, of course, the infrastructure will have to catch up with the demand. The reality is that you must first stimulate demand in order to ensure the market works well. And that's what we did last year.
All right. Last year you started the initiative, and there were supposed to be centers where people could convert these vehicles. Yes. At the time, it seemed you started with how many of those centers? Seven
centers was in Nigeria as of December 31, 2023.
Right.
And today we have 193.
193. That's still a far cry from what you would ordinarily require for the number of vehicles that may want to convert.
You're absolutely correct. But we set out a target of 100 for ourselves when we set out in the year.
You set out for 100.
And we ended up with 193. That is to tell you that the investors, none of those centers, by the way, none of the 193 centers were built by the federal government of Nigeria. They were all centers that people went into their pocket, dug deep, because they believed in the president's vision, established these centers, invested in them, trained personnel, trained technicians, and they are now open to the public. We raised the conversion capacity of Nigeria from mere 700 conversions a year to almost 53,000 conversions a year at the end of the year. As I'm speaking to you, we've set for ourselves a target of having up to 500 conversion centers at the end of this year. Again, we're going to continue to make progress. We're going to continue to add infrastructures, be it the infrastructure of refueling or the infrastructure of conversion, as the case may be, inclusive of even the infrastructure of producing that CNG, which is the mother station. It will not be done using government money. It will be done by leveraging the innovation of our entrepreneurs and innovators, who will be leveraging their own funding, but we will see the market opportunity that the government is stimulating by combination of open, firm, and fair regulation, a very clear policy direction and commitment of the federal government, as the case may be, to stimulate demand. by encouraging conversions in the case of our conversion incentive program that we're doing in the PCNGI, among many other programs. And lastly, last but not the least, in addition to the standard regulation and stimulating the market, the government's own commitment to put its money where its mouth is. I think ultimately these are the reasons why you have open, growing private market like this.
Takes us to the question of standards. Who regulates and ensures that those centers meet required standards?
Absolutely. So in the case of natural gas vehicle, there are 4 agencies that are critical to the delivery of a natural gas vehicle. First, you have, of course, the Standard Organization of Nigeria. The Standard Organization of Nigeria is the regulator of the OEM vehicles, if they're made in or out of Nigeria, or the parts, be it the cylinders or the kits, to ensure that they have what they call the sun cap or the man cap. That means they meet the minimum standard for use. That has been set out by the SON. Last year we worked with them. They released 86 regulations that were launched in the month of March, approved by the then Minister of Trade and Industry, which led to the stimulation of all of this investment I'm talking about. Before those standards were released, they'd been on the shelf for about 4 to 5 years, and we had done nothing about it. When we came as the first task of this initiative, because we know we want to be private sector driven initiative. Government, the president was very clear that PCNGI does not replace private sector initiative and entrepreneurship, because we know government, how much does government have that is going to point to this? There were competing needs in education, in healthcare, in other areas where government wants to spend money. So in our case, we needed to make sure that the private sector come in. So we needed to make sure those standards were in place. So these standards have been languishing for 4 or 5 years. We brought them in, we brought the stakeholders in, and they were approved in the month of March. In addition to the SON, we also have, of course, the Nigerian Automotive Design and Development Council. They are responsible for accrediting the conversion centers as well as the technicians, working, of course, with institutions that are Nigerian Institute of Transport Technology to make sure the research, development, and training for these technicians are in place. So NADDC is also a critical stakeholder when it comes to the regulation of the industry from the conversion point of view. You also have to remember that it's not just vehicles that are converted. Some vehicles are made as NGV vehicles, as CNG vehicles. All of them have to go through periodic inspections of cylinders, as well as inspection of the parts. So these conversion centers serve dual purpose. They serve the purpose of converting as well as inspecting. So NADDC regulates them and also regulates the technicians that go into them. In addition to that, we also, of course, have the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. They regulate the pump. They regulate the dispensing of the gas, the hydrocarbon component of the program. They ensure that only vehicles that are properly converted or OEM vehicles that have been properly inspected and all of these under inspection get gas at the pump. And then, of course, we have the FRSC, the Federal Road Safety Commission. Of course, they have the regulator of the road, and they make sure that only vehicles that are properly regulated within this view will be captured within the Nigerian gas vehicle system. So what we've done is we brought these 4 agencies together. Last year we developed a demo of what we call the NGVMS, which is the Nigerian Gas Vehicle Monitoring System, to ensure the safety of the ecosystem of natural gas vehicle. It's not just CNG, but you know that if an incident happens to an LNG vehicle or even an hydrogen vehicle in the future. So what we're doing is that we're bringing all of these vehicles that run on that run on gas, which is why we call it the Nigerian gas vehicle, not natural gas vehicle, the Nigerian gas vehicle monitoring system. And these 4 agencies are working together collaboratively under the directive and steer of the Minister of Petroleum Gas, who has been very kind to work with the PCNGI to roll out this ecosystem for managing the safety and regulation of the sector. I hope this quarter we're going to begin to see the first adoption of NGVMS. We've begun to make sure that the 193 conversion centers across the country that are doing conversions are beginning to bring in all their conversions into the system. But we are now going to go a step further. That vehicles that are already existing, the trailers, the trucks that are already existing before we started the program, also come into the system so that we can make sure that only regulated vehicles are getting filled with CNG.
It's all right to say you have all the regulatory bodies, but for a country that has found it difficult to standardize its auto technician base,
yes,
what makes you think that this would be properly regulated? Everybody sets up and then you have quacks all over the place.
Yes, we don't just think it, we're already doing the regulation. Right now, you go to the website of NADDC, the list of accredited auto technician workshops that can carry out CNG conversions is there. If you want to get your own workshop accredited, you can also apply there online. They'll come for inspection. They're very strict, and they make sure that they carry out the necessary safety steps. CNG is not like any other hydrocarbon, right? There are specific rules and safety regulations that you must comply with, and NEDDC is there to enforce it. And so for us, I think we should not expect the least from ourselves. The most important thing is that this technology is not new, it's not nascent, it's been around for well over 25 years. Japan had transited their country to natural gas vehicle, specifically CNG, especially for their industrial and commercial vehicles since the 80s. And they buy almost all their gas from the Nigerian LNG burning plant. So if they're able to do it, they don't have to wait. We Nigerians just have to do things properly. And I think with the commitment of Mr. President and the commitment of the PCNGI board and management, and working with these 4 regulatory agencies and the Minister of Petroleum Gas, I'm very confident that we'll be able to roll out a system that Nigerians can trust. And that's why we're doing it deliberately. We did our first stakeholder engagement around this in June. We've done further work to ensure that the demo happened in September. We've done the policy position with the Ministry of Petroleum Gas in December. I believe this January we should start the rollout and grandfathering system. In the meantime, new vehicles that are being converted since the month of September, when we launched our own conversion program from our CIP, are hauled within the NGVMS system. And you see them with a triangular NGVMS sticker. That means that they are properly certified and regulated in terms of conversion.
Now that you speak of safety, let's go that way for a while.
Absolutely.
If you might. And the worry about the safety of a gas-powered vehicle and the case of accidents and all
Yes.
that. And people have spoken against how volatile it might be. How true is that?
I think most of it is based on disinformation, on unfounded rumors. As the case may be, the CNG, intrinsically, as a scientist and an engineer myself, CNG is 18 times less explosive than petrol, 8 times less explosive than diesel. We know this from the chemical property and components. Self-ignition temperature about 1001 degrees centigrade. Much lighter than air, it can quickly dissipate, unlike petrol that flows and then leads to the explosion and fatality you have in petrol tanker accidents that you see all the time. In fact, the only singular incident of CNG accident that happened in Edo State, by the way, last year, as a result of the activities of quacks that went to go and modify They created their own cylinder and then tried to fill it. The first time they're trying to fill it, the only incident of that nature, one incident in the entire country, led to, of course, injury to the 3 persons, 2 of them being the complicit people that actually brought that vehicle engaged in that act, right? 3 people got injured, not that. A day before, there was 1 petrol tanker explosion in Jigawa that wiped up 178 souls. And even after that, from that day to the end of that year, I believe this happened in October last year to the end of the year, Nigeria lost another 400 people to different petrol tanker fire accidents and accidents itself. When you're sitting in a petrol car, you're sitting on a petrol pump. When you get into an accident, that petrol is not in a bulletproof container, unlike CNG that is located in a bulletproof container, in a storage cylinder behind you, not under you're not sitting on it. Beyond that, even beyond that, is that the fuel does not flow. In the case of CNG, it dissipates immediately. It's lighter than air. And so when you look at the combination of all that factor, CNG is much more safer. It's not a contest. In the world today, there's over 30 million CNG vehicles in the world. You hardly hear about a CNG vehicle accident leading to explosion. You hear sometimes EV vehicles do explode. You do hear a lot of time, almost all the time, when petrol accidents happen, there are fatalities because of fire and explosion.
What's the difference in the gases, the various gases?
Yes.
Nigeria is a gas country, as you said.
Yeah.
It's compressed natural gas.
Yes.
As against the other gas. What's the difference here? Because
Is
once you just say it's a gas-powered vehicle, the thought goes to just...
Yes, so there are different types of gases, of course. Natural gas occurs naturally. Its major component is methane and ethane, chemical-wise. These are single-linked hydrocarbon. They are lighter. They quickly dissipate. In fact, if you see your refuse dump, sometimes it lights itself on fire. That's natural gas. So it does not lead to the kind of rambunctious explosion that you get from crude oil-derived gas, which is LPG. That's liquefied petroleum gas. Crude oil-derived gas, just because it's from crude oil, and crude oil is a lot more combustible, like I said, 18 times for petrol and 8 times for diesel, is of course much more flammable. You're talking about butane and propane, double-linked, triple-linked sometimes chemicals. So there's a difference between you using crude oil-derived products, which are heavier, double-linked chemical property, which makes them more explosive and of course more dangerous, versus when you're using single-link like ethane and methane, which is a major primary component of CNG. In the case of CNG, it's just 2 forms of natural gas. Natural gas can come liquefied, which is LNG, which makes it easier for you to move around, but you need to chill it, to cool it, to create that liquid form of it. Or you can move it compressed in those bottles that are bulletproof, and they're also seamless in the case that they do not have any kind of welding joints, which makes sure that they're very safe.
Fine. As a scientist and an engineer, it's quite easy for you to explain this, and to other trained minds, you know what you're talking about. But I'm looking at the generality of the people who, to them, liquefied petroleum gas, compressed natural gas, the one thing that is common there is gas.
Yes.
And the one thing that goes beyond that is cooking gas.
Yes.
And so these are all gases.
Yes, yes.
And people think about the caution surrounding cooking gas, for instance. And here we're piping vehicles with gas. As I said, the one denominating factor is gas. So you can appreciate the level of concern about that. It's gas. And why am I going to be driving a vehicle with gas as dangerous as gas is? Now, that's on one leg. The other, the container. In this case, the cylinders. Yes, you have given us the difference between the LPG and the CNG, but they all are in containers. And if you go by what has happened to cylinders exploding or aging cylinders, now you get where the public worry is all about. So let's address that.
Yes, I think from a scientific point of view, the gas is a state, right? The fact that it's gas does not make it dangerous. In fact, there are more gaseous forms of energy that are absolutely not, we call them inert gas. Gases that are absolutely dead. Like, there's so many of them. We call them inert gas, right? So being gas does not make you inherently dangerous. It's just that you've associated gas with explosion. Now, the interesting thing is that your petrol vehicle actually does not use petrol. It uses gas. That's why if you go to the United States, they will say you gas up your car. What happens is that we store energy that we use in our internal combustion engine as petrol liquid form or diesel liquid form because they're easier to store and move around, and because they do not require pressure, neither do they require a proof or reinforced container to store them. That's why they were designed to be carrying liquid petroleum. But when they get to your engine converts them to gas. It fires them as gas. So your vehicle is already using gas. That's the point I want to make. Whether your vehicle is petrol or your vehicle is a CNG vehicle, it's using gas. Your engine is using gas. So there's already gas in your car. That's why when you go to the US, they say you gas up your car. So your vehicle is transforming the liquid petroleum to gas. So you need nothing to fear if you're now storing the gas and now using it in its pure form. Your engine is going to enjoy its fuel in a purer form. It is not going to be transforming it, which is why the tailpipe emission of a gas vehicle is 30 to 40% lower than that of a petrol or a diesel vehicle. Because there's that transformation of liquid to petroleum, and then the soot and everything that burns thereafter is non-existent in a natural gas vehicle. You just go straight gas to gas because it needs gas. Your engine can never run on liquid. It has to use gas because you fire your engine with pistons. That's why you have fuel injection systems, right? So as it were, you're using gas. Because whether you like it or not, even that petrol is going to get converted to gas. Now, so your second question about containers. The fact that you're using a reinforced, bulletproof, seamless container should actually give you comfort. As I've said before, you're sitting, if you're in a petrol vehicle, you're literally sitting on a petrol tank, a petrol bomb that's not reinforced, that is not bulletproof. The fact that you have one that is reinforced means that the pressure or any kind of issue can be suppressed. And there's also valves that make sure it shuts them off. And more so, when you talk about the expiry, then it's better that your vehicle should go through inspection. So unlike petrol vehicles that you do not inspect the tank, and petrol tanks do have problems too, and if you're using vehicles for a long time, you do know this. They have tanks, they will tell you they need to clean it, they will bring it out, it's leaking and all kind of funny things, and sometimes it leads to accidents. But in the case of CNG, because of the NGVMS system we are creating, you have to go back for regular inspection of your cylinders. Your cylinders have to come into the country with a minimum age, 15 to 20 years before it is allowed in. SON is not going to approve for you to go and buy cylinders of 2 years or 3 years old to expiry. So if it's coming in at 15 to 20 years, that means you have to be using that car for 15 to 20 years before you're required to change that tank. But regardless, there's a system in place with the NGVMS to make sure that you're going through that regular inspection to make sure that you're only using tanks that are within their age.
At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue along this line to establish the safety of the tanks for CNG-powered vehicles. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One-on-One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm still here with Engineer Michael Oluwagbemi, Program Director and Chief Executive of the Presidential CNG Initiative. Now, just before the break, we were looking at the safety and addressing the safety concerns of people who would want to convert their vehicles. And you were talking about how reinforced the tank is. It's seamless. That's what you've just told us. And just take us through the concluding part of that.
Yes, it's seamless. It's reinforced steel, a seamless pipe. It's fitted with valves to make sure it shuts in and shuts out if there's any breach. If there's any drop in pressure, because along the tubes down the line, there's any escape, the pressure drops and shuts off the valve. So if you have an accident, what happens is that whatever is inside your pipe dissipates within seconds because it's much lighter than air. So intrinsically, CNG vehicles are safe. And again, record for record, and you can go do your own independent research of records of petrol vehicles versus CNG vehicles in accidents, and you see, go online, and the internet is an open forum for knowledge. And it's very clear that in terms of accidents occurring, it's in fact even very much competitive against EVs that also have their problems with batteries, but not as bad as petrol vehicles. But petrol vehicles definitely is the most dangerous form of moving around when you talk about explosion and volatility.
Now, this is another angle which some people have alluded to. That is to deal with the brands of vehicles, for instance. Without mentioning names, virtually, let me say as high as 90% of the vehicles that are used in Nigeria are either imported or they come from other climes. They are, brand companies that have specific brands. For the purpose of this, I might just use an example, a theoretical example, and say, for instance, Engineer Michael Oluwagbemi has a franchise. I will call it Gbemi Car, and it's built as a petrol-driven vehicle. And then Cyril buys that car and proceeds to change it from a petrol vehicle to a gas-driven vehicle, is that vehicle still a Gbemi car?
Well, it's a converted Gbemi's car because you're trying to save 85% on your energy cost every week. My Islander used to cost me 70,000 a week to fill up. Now it costs me 6,800.
Yes, but the argument is, why not buy a straight vehicle that is...
Yes, because
otherwise,
yes,
do you have any challenges with, I don't know about that, but let's imagine that your Highlander is from Toyota.
Yes.
And you've converted. Is that still a Toyota?
Well, it's a converted Toyota. And the reason, ultimately, you want to move around from one point to the other.
So what happens to the guarantee on that vehicle?
I will tell you that in Nigeria is a used car market. 99.99% of Nigerian cars have no warranty. And I don't think we should, I always say that Nigerians should solve Nigerians' problem. We have 12 million ICE vehicles, 10 million of them are petrol, 2 million of them are diesel. 99.99% of them have no warranty anyway. The question for me is, how do I get them to consume less fuel so that they don't bankrupt the country and they don't dirty our environment? So if I put in a less than $500 conversion kit, they start using the product that Nigeria currently burns and allows us to then, government, number one, earn gas revenue instead of earning gas-bred diseases as a result of burning natural gas into the air. You have soot and different things. So we take our waste and turn it to wealth. If we have 1 million natural gas vehicle in this country, we'll be consuming about 212 million scoff of gas a day. If you do that, multiply 212 million scoff of gas a day with $1.30, that's the amount of income the federal government of Nigeria will be earning, because every gas in this country belongs to the federal government of Nigeria. So instead of us spending so much money, almost ₦1 trillion a month on fuel subsidy or importation or even consumption, even if we are consuming the fuel right now, that 1 million vehicle will consume less of that fuel. And then we can take the fuel they're consuming, we can sell it to countries that don't have natural gas. And then we can be laughing at them using the 1 million vehicle running on 85% less costly energy, and then we can kick the butts of our neighbor economically. That's what we should do. So it's a no-brainer that you use your comparative advantage to compete. And we have natural gas as our advantage. It's cheaper, it's safer, it's cleaner.
Now that brings us to the vexed question of the cost of conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, when this program was introduced, it was going to cost an amount which could then be seen as affordable for quite a number of people. But things have changed ever since, no thanks to what led to the introduction of the CNG initiative in the first place. And so, there are reports that conversion costs are today in the region of $1 million plus.
Yeah.
How many are going to be able to afford that?
Yes, so number one, I will say that it's important that we do not look at cost in an absolute term. We have to look at cost and then cost savings. Assuming you're actually taking that 1 million naira from your pocket, an average vehicle in Nigeria, you'll be saving 50,000 naira a week. If you're a normal commuter, 5-6 day commuter, you'll be saving, if you're an Uber driver, much more faster. You'll be doing about 200,000 savings a week. But let's say you're a normal commuter, you'll be saving 50,000 naira a week because you're using CNG. That will mean at the end of 20 weeks, which is about 5 months, every savings you're now saving is an accretive saving on the cost of doing that conversion. So in 20 weeks, you will have earned back the cost of that conversion. So for every day that you continue to use petrol, you are digging yourself deeper into debt versus doing the conversion, saving all that money to pay back the conversion, and after that, you still own your car for the next 5 to 6 years.
Right.
So the question for us as government is not the cost of conversion, just the way it was during the case of GSM. I remember the first GSM I bought was for about 60,000 naira, and the Nokia Touchlight phone. I bought my SIM card for 60,000 naira. At that time, it was going for 1 naira to 23 $1 to 23 naira, or $1 to 25 naira. On the official market, on the black market, about 87 naira. Let's even use 87 naira. So in other words, one SIM card, for the sake of argument, or to make it even easier, we use $100. One SIM card was going for $600. Today, that will mean that I'm buying that one SIM card for almost 1.2 million naira. SIM card today is free because of the investment environment we created in the GSM ecosystem. So yes, it will start off as costly, but what the government should work on is affordability, which is the reason why the president first and foremost said, look, we should work and develop a program which we launched in the month of September. We launched this program in the month of September because we had to plan, procure, purchase through the Federal Ministry of Finance those conversion kits that is needed. And of course, these conversion centers had to be set up by the private sector. So we started what we call the Conversion Incentive Program. If you recall, the speech of Mr. President in August, right after the complete removal of fuel subsidy, announced that 1 million vehicles in Nigeria that are commercial will now be able to enjoy free conversion. So that's the first step to affordability. Why was that important? 1 million to 1.5 million vehicles constitute the commercial bus system of Nigeria. So of that 10 million petrol vehicles I talked about 1 to 1.5 million of them are commercial vehicles, commercial buses, Danfo, Molues, those petrol-driven IRCs, Sharon, the ones that are used for along and all of that stuff. And so we felt that that's demography that serves, interestingly, 90% of Nigerians get moved by them. So 90% of Nigeria get moved by less than 15% of Nigerian vehicles. So those 15%, we provided an opportunity for them to be converted for free. As I'm speaking to you in Abuja today, we sign up an average of 100 new vehicles to that program every day, just in Abuja alone. And that program is active in 17 states. And we intend to expand the number of states that they are in. The idea is that these vehicles, they are the ones carrying our young people to school. They are the ones conveying our staff to their workplaces. They are the ones making sure that the traders and the businessmen and the farmers are moving from one point to the other. They should be able to enjoy this free conversion so that the price of transportation can drop. For example, in the case of Ibadan, we deployed about 15 CNG buses through the Pacesetter transport system in December, just in 2 weeks alone. The price of Pacesetter from Lagos to Ibadan was priced at 3,200 naira versus the standard price of 8,000 naira. Just because those 15 vehicles were running from Lagos to Ibadan and created a competition, the petrol vehicles dropped their prices from 8,000 to 6,000. So not only were you enjoying, those people on the CNG buses enjoying the 3,200 discounted prices, those people that are now even on petrol cars, because there's a competition, suddenly started enjoying lower cost of transportation. This is the kind of effect and impact we can have because of that program. That's affordability, stage 1. Affordability, stage 2, we now said, fine. In our urban and peri-urban centers, like Abuja, like Port Harcourt, like Kaduna, like Kano, like Ibadan, they have what we call the ride share. These are private vehicles, your vehicle, my vehicle. I can decide to be an Uber driver. Some people do it not for money, they do it just to meet people. But I decide to do a Uber driver, but it's my private vehicle. It's okay, fine. Those guys can enjoy 50% discount because it's their private vehicle. They use it to church, they use it for their family. But because they're serving the public also as Uber drivers, we want to give them some benefit to this. So we give them 50% discount. Providing also financial institutions who also provide the financing for the balance. Because they're businesses, they can see their history, they have to be Uber drivers for 6 months. They will see that, okay, they've been earning this certain level of income, so they're willing to give them the credit. And we've seen that program also take off. And more recently, in the month of December, we launched with the Credit Core, another program of Mr. President, what we call the Credit Access for Lighter Mobility. For private people like you and I that just work in a company, you work at NTA, I work somewhere else, and we just make sure we have our salaries. It's better for me to start enjoying CNG now. So the president has talked about credit, opening credits to the common man so that the common man does not have economic pressure to steal or economic pressure to go and cut corners. So what we do is that with that program, you can apply on the Calm Fund website as well as through your partner financial institutions and say, look, from day one, I don't have the 1 million naira, but I have my salary for the next 12 months. Allow me to get the conversion done. And if I'm saving 50,000 naira a week, that's additional money in my pocket. I can put that towards the conversion, and suddenly the affordability question is solved.
Well, let's also remember that that salary also out of it is a mortgage that has been paid. There are other things tied to that salary. And perhaps at the end of the day, the take home is nothing that would be, nothing to write home about.
But you're already saving money. So you're saving about 50,000-60,000 naira a week. And if you are told to put 25,000 naira a week towards paying off your conversion kit that is giving you that saving, you're netting off, you're making 40,000 naira extra.
Okay, I'm also looking at, while not pressing the point, I'm also looking at Mr. A, who has, as they say in local parlance, managed his Tokumbo vehicle for the past 10 years and just getting by to move his family to and fro with all kinds of financial pressures on him. And then he gets into another one to do this conversion. And, so is there no way to ensure that the price of this conversion, the cost of this conversion is lowered?
Just like the president, I don't believe in price fixing. Price fixing is going to get you in problem. We fixed price in petroleum for 30, 40 years. It almost bankrupted the country. The day you start fixing price is the day that you destroy that ecosystem. In the case of GSM, we never fixed price. Nobody ever said, oh, the price of Airtel SIM card is going to be X. The government comes in and says, no, the price of GSM now, everybody have uniform prices. All you needed to do was regulation. Prevent price gouging, encourage competition, free entry and exit of investments. Investments flows in, there's competition, the price comes down. We're already seeing the competition. We already got an announcement of a couple of conversion centers that have sourced their own kits and now saying they will be selling for 700,000 naira. Some sell for 825,000 naira already. So there's already competition. So it's very important that we don't get into the problems of price fixing. I don't think government should do that. Our work as government is to ensure we have transparent regulation and also encourage investment to increase supply and reduce price.
Let me ask this question. From the statistics you've seen, who are doing more conversions? The commercial vehicle owners or just the private vehicle owners? That's one leg of it. And how would you rate the response so far? I know initially there was some form of enthusiasm, but when other matters got in the way, there's a drop. So how would you assess that?
The enthusiasm has never been higher from our own statistics and data. I will tell you for free that there's about almost 10 times as much that we're doing within the government program is being done by the private sector. As I speak with you, there was one private sector player that had brought in 18,000 kits and informed me about it yesterday. People are queuing at stations. You're seeing those queue at the stations not because we are not trying as much as possible to build stations. We used to have just 20 stations in the whole of Nigeria last year. We have 56 now. We have 8,600 developments. We're expecting to deploy another 100 this year. Those queues are because people have converted so much and people are still converting. The NIPCO station towards the airport, there's a 4 months waiting list for conversion. In the case of some of my new conversion center in Port Harcourt, he called me about 3 days ago and told me that he has already 500 people that are waiting to get converted. So conversion, people's enthusiasm, people's buying into this, I think that's one of the biggest successes we have from last year.
All right, let's go beyond that. It's been converted, and where are the stations? That's the other issue. Take a city like Abuja.
Yes.
How many of those stations actually serve CNG to vehicles?
Not enough. So today we have 30. In fact, one got turned on today in Kubwa. No, I think Mabushi, sorry. And then another one should get turned on in Kubwa any moment from now. Every day, new stations are being added. NNPC added 6 stations last week in Lagos. In Abuja, currently we have this line of sight. We're having 14 stations fully working before the end of February. Very small. But the reality is that there was just one. The one NIPCO by the airport when I sat with you last year.
Right.
So you can see if I do times 14 between last year and now, and then I do the same times 14 between this year and next year, you can see how the numbers start to get to multiply. So the journey starts with the first one, and then you must ensure that you have the right environment, because you have to remember, none of these stations are being built with the taxpayers' money. You will need the investors. Each station will cost you between $100,000 and $250,000. You need investors to believe, number one, that there's a market, that you will not come and disrupt the pricing system by having favorites and encouraging price gouging on the other hand, and then that you will ensure that people can get their money in and get their money out. Once you have that environment, investment will flow, and you have more supply, and prices will come down.
It's a good thing that you mentioned that among the regulatory agencies, there is the midstream,
NMDPR, yes.
Yes, and downstream regulatory
yes,
agency. But
yes.
because this is extremely important,
Yeah.
even with the petrol stations. I mean, the matter of under-dispensing is
Yes.
widespread,
Yes,
even
yes.
now.
Yes, yes.
Even with the price at what they are, it's
Yeah.
still there. So, I mean, for the CNG, more people are going to turn to it, but it's still relatively new. So how do you begin to believe that what you're dispensing is actually it? Because, I mean, it's still new as far as I'm concerned.
It's
The same agency
Yeah.
which has found it extremely difficult to monitor and deal with such under-dispensing in the petrol regime is the same one in charge here.
Yeah, it's important that we understand, of course, the work of regulator is tough. The regulator cannot be everywhere at the same time. So we all have to participate in the regulation. If you see that you are being under-dispensed, your work is to whistleblow, is to report that. But most of the time we don't report, we just wave it off when we move on. However, I have a very close working relationship with NMDPRA. His engineer Farouk is somebody that is very professional, and his team are very professional, and they work very hard to make sure they deliver for Nigeria a well-regulated petroleum environment. They believe in the same open system, but a well-regulated open system. And I think that for us as Nigerians is to make that job easier. At the end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about Nigerians cutting corners. As your number one work as a citizen is not to make the life of government or your fellow citizens more difficult. So if you're a businessman and you're getting into the business of CNG, or you're already in the business of petroleum, please be a good Nigerian.
What's the level of your collaboration with the transportation unions?
Very close. In fact, the call I was taking walking into this studio was from the Chairman Board of Trustees of the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers, Alhaji Yasin. I consider them our partners in progress, be it NURTW or Road Transport Employees Association of Nigeria, the ambassador, who is a very close friend of mine and leader, as well as the NATO, the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners, led by Alhaji Othman. These organizations are the heart of Nigeria's economy. You have to understand that the basic heart of an economy is the velocity of money. Well, how does money move? Money moves when people move. So the transportation sector is the primary constituency for economic development. So for us, we've been partnering with them. In the month of June, July, August to September, we have what we call a pack-to-pack. And they've been working very closely with us to mobilize their members for conversions, and we've been very successful in doing that with them.
All right. Well, still so much to talk about, but we'll have to leave this conversation here. And as I round up, let me just say, Program Director, Chief Executive, Presidential CNG Initiative, Michael Oluwagbemi. It's been interesting talking to you again.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I look forward to coming back again to give you updates.
You can keep an eye on Program. And that concludes our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.